Snoh Aalegra's story is one of resilience and persistence, battling through exploitative deals, rocky relationships, and generally a long and hard road to get where she is today. I think her last album captures this more than any as she explores those feelings through this heavily introspective tape. So today I wanted to go through that album, song for song, and dive into exactly what she's saying to discover the meaning and story behind each song and the album as a whole. Without further ado, sit back and enjoy Temporary Highs in the Violet Skies. We're met with a tense and almost anxiety-inducing beat that reflects Snoh's trepidation and indecision, as the title suggests. But let's start with the intro before getting ahead of ourselves. The combination of lyrics and instrumentation immediately place us in the sky. Not a violet one, but a distinctly white sky, which is a first hint that different metaphors are going to be built and expressed through colour in this album. This white sky is most likely heavily clouded, correlating to Snoh's gloomy headspace here in this first song. Also, through the illusion of birds and seemingly seasons, Snoh seems to reference migration and the sad reality to Snoh that birds can leave when necessary, but Snoh doesn't really have that luxury. Birds here may be a metaphor for men, or more broadly, exes. They leave Snoh high and dry only to eventually come back in a future season, perhaps now that she's blooming, or in other words, famous and successful, or just in a good place in her life, finally starting to get over her ex and their split. But away from love, as we'll explore throughout this project, Snoh's career is a major theme in this album. The challenges she faces with it and the price of living it, despite it being her ultimate dream for as long as she can remember. So perhaps birds represent free spirits, unaffiliated with fame, who can shift careers and broadly experience freedom. Obviously, this interpretation puts a negative spin on her success and earned privilege, but captures that honesty of never truly being content and the reality of living in the public eye. One thing to think about when you listen to this song is the contrast in lyricism and production between the intro and outro to the verses and chorus at large. This intro is very open and almost remorsefully honest. It just sounds like Snoh's in pain having these thoughts, like it's that difficult for her to think and verbalize. But let's speed it up as the song does and get into the first verse and its story. In this more direct section of the song, Snoh's talking to an ex who wants to patch things up and try again, although Snoh's not having it. Unlike the intro and outro, as Snoh talks to her ex, she puts up her defensive walls and harder exterior by remaining strong and shaming him and his actions. Snoh protects herself by acting unfazed and uninterested in this moment, despite the truth that she still wants him as revealed in those more open moments of honesty. Just like in the verses, Snoh has a significant amount of self-worth and self-respect as she tells her ex that she won't settle for him in the chorus. She knows she deserves better than that. And the same goes for the second verse. Snoh knows, or at least says, that she would be doing herself a disservice by giving into him and her deep and honest desires, which says something about herself. It's almost like an internal battle in terms of knowing what's right and wrong in this situation. Yet Snoh can't lie to herself and say that a little part of her doesn't want this too. But maybe she values showing him up more than appeasing herself. Continuing with this thread of honesty, let's wrap it up here with the outro, where just like the intro, this is a more vulnerable honesty. This is Snoh's inner monologue and conversation with her own conscience, but unlike the intro, this part includes both sides of Snoh. Her hard exterior and facade, and her truth and honesty. The two are battling each other in this conflicted and confused act of ambivalence. To further emphasize this thematic battle, the outro is the only part of the song that's in reverse, along with its distortion and pitch change, making it unique from the rest of the track and also the most chaotic sounding. And if we rewind a bit, this opening song contains 3 different beats and instrumentals. Like Snoh herself in creating this album couldn't decide on what song should be first. So she used 3 in 1, but they all reflect her frustrating indecision in this single song. In this conflicted chaos, the musical change may also take us deeper into Snoh's conscience, into the layer beneath the adamant act, but also beneath her surface thoughts. And like I alluded to, she acknowledges that deep inside her, there is a little part of her that wants this guy back too. In the same breath, despite acknowledging what she wants, she immediately follows by admitting that she's wrong for even thinking that. Even wanting him a little is way too much, and she condemns herself for not believing that. But she just can't shake her feelings for him because they're true to her, and that's how love is. It's illogical and chaotic. Even calling him baby, a common term of endearment, signifies that despite her harsh words, there is still love and affection there. Snoh is in her mind, revealing that this particular portion, and maybe the whole song, is not a face-to-face talk, but instead a talk with herself, where she has no choice but to be honest. She blames her ambivalence on her ex's actions, avoiding accountability. She feels like he's messing with her head and confusing her feelings for him by leaving and returning and showing interest in starting things back up. Ironically enough, if those actions aren't intentional, her ex is being indecisive himself, but Snoh doesn't call him out for it, only seeing it in herself. Finally, Snoh reaffirms herself in her doubts and her indecision. She can do better than him. She's almost convincing herself to not give in to his advances and her lingering feelings for him. She also criticizes herself for her indecision, and that for some fucked up reason, deep within her, she still wants this guy. This next song, as explained by Snoh, is about staying in a toxic or messy relationship with somebody despite knowing better. Instead, it turns into a cycle of realizing that you should have left a long time ago, but you keep staying. Our narrative begins with Snoh in distress after seemingly discovering something that causes her to rethink everything she knows about this guy she's waking up next to. While this could be the morning after a one-night stand or the start of something new, it seems more likely to me that this has been an established relationship for some time. The realization is that he's cheating on her or he's cheating with her. It's not entirely clear to me which one it is, but that's the situation I gather from this. You would think that Snoh would be outraged, but although she does sound hurt, more than anything, she seems stunned and stupefied. Those immediate doubts and concerns are short-lived. For just a moment, Snoh does view him as a stranger, like she can't relate to him anymore. And her understanding of their relationship completely crumbles in the immediate wake of this. While common reason makes us believe that this song begins with the end of their relationship, that doesn't stop them from being together. And just like the previous song, Snoh can't get enough of this person, but is a lot more shameless in admitting that, at least to herself. And that's what makes this story particularly disturbing. Snoh is so into this guy that this discovery doesn't drive her away enough to leave. For transparency, in a Twitter Q&A, Snoh revealed that this song isn't about someone in particular, but instead was crafted through her reflecting on past situations and maybe mashing up a few experiences or letting her imagination run with ideas. The pre-chorus is reminiscent of Indecisive, although in a more accepting role where Snoh is complicit and not as defensive as she once was. She knows that she's prone to giving in to sweet nothings and can have her mind changed by the men she's with, despite generally knowing better. He knows what to say and how to play Snoh to keep her around and placated. There's that element of awareness again though, where Snoh knows it's wrong but can't stop herself from giving into it and trapping herself in this self-made cycle. But it's in the chorus that follows that captures Snoh's admission of defeat by acknowledging that she lost him and their real chance of being together outside of this arrangement, but shamelessly admits that she'll always want him. Just like Indecisive, there's that element of right and wrong and taboo relationships, but at the core of Snoh's individuality and desires, those labels mean nothing right now, as her heart is set on something she can't have. Snoh pins her love for him on the fact that he takes her high. This likely relates to ideas of bliss and wonder in love. A perfect connection and relationship, although this could be a case of relationship goggles or delusion. So more likely this fits in with the pre-chorus and his tendency to say the right things and make her feel good, emotionally and physically. Speaking about the song in an interview, Snoh spoke about this type of situation and said, "There's a strange beauty to this type of relationship. The emotions are so strong and raw. There's something about hating somebody you love that makes it stronger in a very fucked up way." This type of honesty and perspective makes Snoh's stance quite clear. There is love there, and it's hard to let it go despite what the reality of events would expect you to think. The post-chorus is very minor but also oddly unique. There's nothing else like it in the song, which may mean it's important. For starters, it's a direct command, but it also sounds kind of sexy, but also a little taboo, fitting with the story we have here. It's as if Snoh wants him to admit that she's lost him. Their long-time relationship is over, but it has a sultry or even kinky feel to it, like a sense of degradation. If this is the case, it would reinforce the idea that this relationship is strictly built on lust and desire. Otherwise, I'll seek help. Unlike Indecisive, Snoh is letting his actions slide. It seems like now in the second verse, either time has passed and the relationship has continued, or her tone has changed completely as they've started a conversation about it. But a motif of this song is Snoh's weak defense and resistance to his charms. She can't seem to put her foot down with him. She's being lenient with his actions and likely giving him the benefit of doubt in situations where he doesn't deserve it. Snoh is helplessly in love and can't rip herself away despite the relationship's red flags and once again having that innate understanding of knowing better. For a moment, Snoh wonders what his intentions were, either with her or with the nameless woman on the other end. Was it a simple mistake or something real? Perhaps having his true and honest perspective could give her a clearer mind in deciding things, but she realizes that no matter what his intentions were, she's too deep into this relationship and her feelings for him are only becoming stronger and stronger. She'd stay with him regardless. So far, it's been a rough start for Snoh in what she calls her most playful album, but it's here in this Neptunes produced track that those playful notes are really introduced. The subject is still a bit tragic, but we should expect that at this point. The opening line references the idea of wearing a mask in public to hide your true emotions and pretending that you're fine when everything is not fine. Kind of like having a lighthearted, up-tempo beat when you're discussing something heart-wrenching and personal. But doing that may be particularly necessary and likely challenging if your relationship is public or a big deal and the first thing everybody thinks of asking you. For this reason, in my headcanon, this could be about Snoh's relationship with Michael B. Jordan, while obviously not confirmed. The next line in this opening verse suggests that the end of this relationship and the pain or memories are overpowering and sparked by simply just hearing their name in conversation. In the closing couplet here, Snoh says it takes a heart to break it. This may mean that you need a heart to know how to break someone else's, or that true heartbreak can only happen by connecting with somebody else completely and giving that person your heart. When this person gave up on their love and relationship, he took her heart, pride, confidence, and more with him, leaving Snoh broken and incomplete, and in need of healing like most people are at the end of a relationship. Moving into the pre-chorus, like I've pointed out, there is a playfulness to this record despite its serious and negative subject, and it's sort of underpinned by Snoh's mature approach to heartbreak and acceptance of it. She's not clinging onto it, she's not crying over it, she's accepting that love is a risk, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but so be it. It's over now, but time will tell highlights that it's a fresh split, and that the coming days, weeks, or months will reveal if the relationship is truly over, and if both people can move on and recover from it. Are one of them going to try and reignite it? Is Snoh going to completely heal and get back the things that she lost? Time will tell. The refrain of the chorus seems to be directed to Snoh's ex in the song. She seems to suggest that he was never looking for love. If he was, he would have found it in Snoh, right in front of his eyes the whole time. I will say, it is difficult to extract more from it than that because it seems like a very personal line that may be riddled with context meant only for one person to understand. Like, was he looking for something else in Snoh? Or did he perceive Snoh's love as something else the whole time? It's difficult to speculate based on what we're given here. Either way, it does paint Snoh as the victim in this heartbreak. From her perspective, she was all in from the beginning, but it was he who misread or misunderstood their relationship. In the second verse, Snoh digs into more of the relationship's problems, albeit briefly. It seems like he was distant when she needed him most. We can also gather that the relationship ended once before, but this guy came back to Snoh claiming he had changed, but in the end, the same problems persisted. Or maybe he claimed that the relationship was forcing him to change, forcing him to make what he thought was a big step and a major commitment to Snoh. But to her, it was nowhere near enough, and speaks to the type of guy he is and was before Snoh. Closing out this verse with a single line, the self-assured Snoh returns from portions of Indecisive. She doesn't need this guy anymore, and maybe never did. She just wants him to know that she's over him, and doesn't need his validation, love, affection, or attention anymore. Snoh knows her worth, and isn't settling for him and what he's providing, and is instead picking herself up and walking away with her head high. It sounds like Snoh has found the one. She speaks about him so highly that you would think that it's been a serious relationship for a long time and just been perfect in every way. But that's rarely how it goes here. As we progress through the track, revisiting these lyrics, it might seem like Snoh has one thing on her mind when she first meets him. That something special might be his ability to please her and might reflect the nature of their certain physical relationship. But hey, if we want to give Snoh the benefit of doubt, perhaps this portion of the song is just super early into a relationship and sex is just the beginning of it. From a more romantic view, she might be describing love at first sight that is eventually confirmed through their time together, but lust at first sight might just be a little bit more fitting, because sex is the clear premise of the song and something on the forefront of her mind. She wants to be pleased and treated the way she deserves and the way she likes. A small detail I want to draw attention to is the use of finally in the last line here. This is perhaps the first nod to a big theme of the album. For starters, there's that gnawing feeling of getting older and not having your lifelong partner confirmed and in place. With that comes perhaps insecurity and a fear of never finding it, and this feeling would only compound the older you get. So while this may be a light-hearted, fun, playful sex song, there is an element of fear here, but also calm and relief in finally finding her treasure. Another way we can interpret this definitely fits with a major theme, and that is that Snoh has had to go through a lot of BS to finally get a love like this. A lot of heartbreak, a lot of exes, a lot of toxic relationships, but maybe it was all worth it. The pre-chorus is where the first real and obvious allusions to sex come in, particularly the phrase nice and slow. While it could be used in non-sexual circumstances, let's be serious. It could also be a little nod to the Usher classic, which is most definitely about sex, and a song she has ties to, as she sung a sample of it the year before on Division's Between Us. Generally, the pre-chorus and the song in its entirety really is Snoh exploring and asking or demanding what she wants sexually, physically, and emotionally in this relationship. Take me over naturally has some sort of dominant connotation fitting with our sexual interpretation, but being a little bit more wholesome, she wants this love to be all-consuming and intoxicating. Something that is going to completely capture her attention and desires. And just briefly, because we've banged on about it, the chorus continues with these sexual wants and needs. Generally, Snoh is speaking in confirmations and affirmations, enjoying their love and encouraging it. And in the second version of the chorus, there's a slight change to the lyrics that flips the focus as Snoh encourages her partner to affirm what he likes and wants from Snoh, much like she's been doing. Overall, endorsing positive sex and communication. Now, my division might be showing, but she does mention Muse in the second verse, which could be a continued reference to that album, but more importantly, sets up a connection between painting, colors, creativity, and other artistic illusions to their love and sex. She calls it picture perfect and inspiring or maybe even motivating more love and sex like it. As I alluded to in the first verse, it's here in the bridge where their relationship draws a few questions, particularly in the second line. It suggests that the pair don't fully know each other, hinting at this being a fling, something fresh, or something that just came out of nowhere. But either way, this is where the nature of the relationship is challenged and what might change our perspective on the song, from cute lovers getting it on to a lust-fueled sating of desires. Before that though, the opening line of the bridge reflects that authority and control has been passed back to Snoh as she takes the lead in her wants. The nature of the relationship itself seems to be flexible, which counters notions of it being a one-sided dominant relationship, like Snoh may call for at times. It's two people who want to feel good the way they want, so control's up for grabs and shared at different times. There is another change in production here, obviously not uncommon for a bridge, but there is that distorted reverse sound once more. In the past, this has been an indication of Snoh's truest thoughts coming out, but here, well, we can eliminate that being an exclusive use case for it. This beat change and its following instrumental break is likely a representation of their increasing and climaxing love taking full focus and attention. Surprise! Snoh is in another one of those toxic situations and cycles that she just can't seem to completely rid herself of. In each pre-chorus, Snoh seems to be over him and not interested in hearing what he has to say or continuing their relationship. She's asking him to move on, like she's trying to do, and cleverly reinforces that by stating that he's living a lie if he thinks that their relationship can continue, and would be doing himself a service by understanding that. In whole, Snoh opens here by presenting herself as mature and in the process of moving on from this unhealthy relationship, while the guy in question continues trying to pull her back into it. Perhaps like what's been done in previous songs like Indecisive, the difference between the pre-chorus and chorus may reflect two sides of Snoh. The pre-chorus may represent Snoh's honest thoughts of knowing better, while the chorus captures her actions and what she really does. The reality is, Snoh's caught up in one of her toxic cycles of an unending relationship and can't pull herself away because they both know they're too far into it to fully stop. We can even see how her thoughts are changing and developing through the chorus itself. At first, it's his fault, but very soon after, Snoh takes some responsibility too, and seems to completely give in again and fall back into it. Now, let's speak about Tyler. He might take on a few different responsibilities in this story. He seems to act as a third party, questioning why Snoh stays in this relationship and entertains this guy. He may represent a good guy she should be with instead of him, who can offer her a life and love she's deserving of. Or he could be an indistinct source of wisdom, like a good friend or just another source of consciousness who provides Snoh with advice here. Either way, Snoh never interacts directly with Tyler in the song. All of her lyrics seem to be either directed to herself or her relationship partner. Tyler criticizes Snoh for not ending things and perpetually ruining her chances at love. Staying in this relationship is only hurting herself at this point, and she could do better if she could only stop herself from giving into this cycle. In this verse, as compared to the next, Tyler focuses more on Snoh's responsibility and role in this toxic cycle rather than attacking the guy. He's harmless, and it could all end if Snoh stopped replying to him and giving him attention. But Snow's too scared to end it, perhaps because she feels trapped in this cycle. If she isn't in one of these situationships, what then? Would she just be in another? Is she more afraid to be alone? Tyler is saying that he could free her if she left him, and in turn, freed herself. He's also proposing what life could be like if she freed herself and cut ties with this guy and ended the cycle. The bridge continues the same sentiments as the pre-chorus, despite the chorus appearing in between the two. She thinks that this guy desperately needs to work on himself and find himself, painting painting him as hurt and the problem in the relationship. If we want to throw a curveball into the mix, perhaps the honest truth is that Snoh can't leave him and bring herself to end the relationship. Yet on the surface, much like she did on Indecisive, she acts morally superior and mature to his advances, wanting more from love and saying the right things. In verse 2, Tyler points out that this guy tries to buy Snoh's affection with expensive shiny things that lose their meaning because it's all done with ulterior motives. He gives her things to smooth over the cracks in their relationship and convince Snoh to keep things going with him. It's an endless cycle of pain for Snoh until he apologizes and they make up, but it always leaves Snoh as a crying mess. To close out the verse, Tyler pressures Snoh into changing her ways quickly because time is running out. We've talked about this idea already. If Snoh keeps entertaining these situations, is she gonna have time to find something real, long-lasting, and meaningful? But Tyler also encourages her throughout the song with a metaphor of promises of a lifestyle she could be living that would give her a much more extravagant and luxurious and freeing life if she was just brave enough to end the cycle she keeps finding herself stuck in. This metaphor likely translates to a real and fulfilling relationship, not necessarily riches and wealthy material things. The outro here confirms the idea of this being an endless cycle of toxic love that goes on and on. She can't bring herself to call it quits. She feels an odd sense of commitment to this toxic cycle that leaves her feeling trapped or locked in her toxic relationships that have already been a topic of a few songs. And I'll let you in on something. This isn't the last one. This song, like the title might suggest, is about a suffering relationship built on a bad connection and a major flaw, a lack of communication. Despite how desperately he claims to want to see Snoh, combined with their relatively local distance, the best he can give her is FaceTime. Ironically, not actual FaceTime. Another way to interpret this is that maybe the only way Snoh can see him is through FaceTime, and he won't even pick that up. Either way, there's a serious problem of mixed signals here where one thing is said and another thing is done. Without adequate communication, Snoh is left to internalize her questions and deal with them herself, while not receiving any real answers, in fear that pushing for answers too much might just spell the end of their relationship together. But forcing herself to work through it alone is just as bad as the relationship ending, or might lead to the relationship ending anyway. So you can see her problem here. Snoh tries to be brave despite her hurt and somber tone. She tries pretending that the relationship is fine, but clearly something has to give. At the beginning of the relationship, or at least throughout its time, her partner talked a big game about this being a serious, long-term relationship and commitment, something that likely excited Snoh following her situationship frustrations. Yet evidently, they're running into problems now and didn't manage to get far enough for them to consider moving in together, something that Snoh attributes as a big step of a long-term commitment. The comparative use of I and we right after each other is interesting and may play into a potential theme of Snoh's lovelorn status. Leading with I gives a sense of personal failure in yet another chance at love that didn't work out. She's disappointed, but also a little embarrassed. Following that up with we brings her back to reality and the situation at hand, which is that the partnership of their relationship didn't work out either. We could interpret the final 4 lines of the pre-chorus as directed to herself. She may be putting off self-analyzing her role in her failed loves. Is she capable of finding something good? If all of her chances of love fizzle out, is she more responsible than she thinks? She doesn't want to have to go down that road. In that interpretation, the I in psychology is the individual who acts in the world and is therefore Snoh's physical actions and embodiment, and therefore we would be her entire existence outside of that, or perhaps the rest. Fitting with what we've already heard in this project, that would either be her conscience, unfiltered truth, or complete self. In the chorus, Snoh uses a weather analogy, not for the first time. This metaphor seems to suggest that maybe her partner is scared or broken from a past love but hasn't told her. She can feel it though, but they don't have to talk about it if he doesn't want to, which breeds this type of toxic relationship, and that's one with the inability to have tough or uncomfortable conversations with your significant other, which is needed to learn and grow in moments like this. Snoh feels like she's in a terrible position. With no clear communication, she's left wondering if she did something wrong. Did he set himself off by mentioning something? There are so many questions and no answers. Snoh's left with 2 choices: question herself, or shrug it off and pretend that they don't have any issues. At least that way, they can keep the relationship going. If they ignore that they have problems and just keep sweeping them under the rug and not talking about them, the relationship can survive. But wanting a relationship to survive that's barely even living raises the question, why does Snoh even want it? This might be another example of Snoh wanting comfort in a relationship versus the doom and gloom that awaits her when she's alone. By his lack of effort and words, it's becoming clear to Snoh that he's not really interested in something real and meaningful like he said he was. Or at least he's doing a terrible job of showing it. She isn't sure how else she could interpret it. At this point, he's just wasting Snoh's time and energy. Even if he is scared, Snoh doesn't know how she's supposed to know that or how to deal with it. And above that, Snoh doesn't feel like it's her responsibility to pull this out of him and fix him. He should be mature enough to talk it out and give his all in a relationship he's in, especially given his talk about wanting it to be a serious thing in the first place. Welcome to another deeply personal story that I'll try to make light of and analyze. The scene is immediately set with the flight attendant speaking on an airplane speaker, telling the passengers and us to take a seat and strap in for this one. The verse starts with a familiar Sky reference. Cloud 9 is an idiom for extreme bliss and happiness. Falling off this hints to a great relationship that ended, only for them to run into each other again, like here, on this flight. A row apart. Then comes the awkward moment of running into your ex, seeing them and thinking, is this real? What are the odds of this? What should I say? Do I say anything? A whole bunch of scenarios play out in your head. The mention of his pride also gives us a hint that things ended a bit sour or rocky, which is expanded upon at the end of this first verse and much of the second verse. Despite the 4-hour flight, not much is said between them, as they sit in awkward and tense silence. Only when they landed and could go separate ways did the guy speak up and say anything. And when he did, he was clearly desperate to go his own way and never see her again. Snoh wanted to talk about things, maybe to clear things up, maybe to see if he wanted to go on another date, but very soon after, she realized that he has no interest in speaking to her. Calling her such a fucking singer may mean that she's stereotypically dramatic or emotional, like her job calls for. He says this in response to her wanting to talk things out. Maybe he was worried that she was going to write about their experience together, which she did. Along with that, too loud here may mean that he's right, but to an uncomfortable level, because it forces Snoh into some sort of introspection. Let's talk about the namesake of this song. If we're taking it as a positive thing, which given the chorus is likely true, she had a great time with this guy and thought that he could have been the one. But it turned out to all be in Snoh's head, because he never had the same intentions, or at least didn't by this point. As the second verse may fill in, it seems like things with this guy were great until they weren't. Speaking of which, the beginning of it is Snoh reminiscing on the good times that they had together, like their first date, their first kiss, and the fun they shared. Those happy memories at the time gave Snoh the idea of this being something great and a dreamlike relationship, especially contrasting from some of her other relationships that we've heard on this project. There are a lot of personal references and inside stories that are impossible for me to define and interpret, but it shows the depth of this story and how real and personal it is for Snoh. Seemingly, even the title Tangerine Dream is a reference to one of their inside jokes, particularly that juicy fruit that he wouldn't name. Despite how far they traveled, their relationship is still on the ground, no better than it started before the flight. Despite the 4 hours of isolated and almost forced conversation out of awkwardness, nothing changed. Snoh wanted to make things right and talk about things, but he wanted to never speak again and let what remains of their relationship that already crashed now burn. It's taken a while, but the reason for their cold distance, at least from his end, might be because Snoh didn't text him back a week prior, which she defends because apparently he did some crazy shit. So again, it's clearly a very personal and touchy story that's riddled with things nobody else could possibly know. But what makes it great is that we can feel it and perhaps resonate with it in our own unique circumstances. Let's all just take a moment to have a deep breath and compose ourselves with this nice little interlude. I'm sure this will be very surface level and superficial. This song is about the price of fame and Snoh questioning, is it worth it? The comfy life of fame and wealth is losing its appeal to Snoh. Whether this is a new thought or a temporary low, Snoh considers the things she's lost to get the life she worked so hard to get. She questions if all the temporary highs of fame are worth it, inferring that they're not long lasting and just brief lifts off the ground. This could range from everything in her field, from performing on stage and getting off, to releasing an album and the time in the interim. The line about her friends not being her friends could be taken in two ways. Could be about her friends in the industry. With those people, there's always that worry of ulterior motives and that everyone's just business partners at the end of the day, using each other to advance or sustain. Speaking about the song in an interview, she did reference living in LA as one of the things she was referring to. And this would fit in with that interpretation, being the capital of show business and attracting people with a similar mindset. But it also works for the other interpretation. That is, her real friends back home in Sweden or away from fame. Their lack of a substantial relationship makes it difficult to truly classify them as friends anymore. The chorus echoes the main refrain and questions Snoh has amid this airy and atmospheric song that captures Snoh's introspective thoughts in the wake of her most successful album. Those feels again. Despite her success and firm status as a great artist, she can't help but wonder, is everything she sacrificed for this life worth it? Snoh accepts the irony or shame of working to be an artist for almost all of her life and doing everything up until now to become one. That journey involved many difficult twists and turns, and again, sacrifices. But despite her success, she can't ignore the emptiness of her life at times. Maybe this is a temporary feeling for her, but you can see where a dramatic bit of life reflection would come up if your entire life has been focused on achieving one thing, only to wonder, was it worth it? Now that we've covered temporary highs, let's talk about Violet Skies. Speaking about this song in an interview, Snoh's called it a letter to her younger self, largely saying, thank you for not giving up. Combining this idea with the previous song, as the titles and sequencing of tracks would prompt us, it shows the two sides of Snoh as she copes with fame, success, and her life as it is. While she may be unhappy and doubt the worth and cost of her life at times, there is an undeniable root of pride and accomplishment she feels for achieving her dreams and making it where she always hoped she would. But it was a long and challenging road, and the chorus reflects Snoh's past and the uncertainty she felt in pursuing music at times. My world was upside down may also refer to having an innocence in a new and different world she was entering, showbiz, and how that differed from regular life. The intentions and priorities people have, the dog-eat-dog world, Snoh experienced it firsthand and had to learn as she went. But let's talk about Violet Skies. What are they? Snoh's described it as hopefulness, and here it's definitely intended to mean the heights and success of her dreams of becoming an artist. For those who have heard some of Snoh's story before, you would know that for a time, Prince was her mentor, who took her under his wing for 3 years before his passing. And she's revealed that this album, and song in particular, were inspired by his Purple Rain, but she wanted to put her own spin on it, hence Violet and Skies. Making this connection even more clear, Purple Rain is a song about hope and persistence in the pursuit of one's dreams for the future, which is almost exactly what Snoh is conveying here through this interaction with her younger self. The use of our and our eyes is interesting and reflects the MO of the entire song, it being to and from Snoh. She talks to herself here, but at times, perhaps through the use of ad-libs and layered vocals, both versions of Snoh speak together as one. Young Snoh had her moments of doubt, not truly believing that success was on the cards for her, and would have struggled to believe a divine messenger in these times who told her it was there, not too far away. The opening couplet of the first verse simply captures the essence of the song and Snoh's mindset at the time as she reflects on the past. Snoh was always in her own head, overthinking her situation and worrying about the future that her journey was leading her down. But in the end, she battled through and evidently made it. She's spoken in greater detail about what some of her challenges were, and I won't go through them here, but I'll include some links to interviews where you can hear about it if you're interested. For a Cliff Notes summary, chasing music from such a young age introduced Snoh to the brutal business of show business, like I've alluded to. She was pressured into signing deals out of fear and without lawyers, as some people took advantage of her inexperience and innocence as a desperate and excited artist. But through those tough times, she grew, improved, and learned. And it's impossible to say, but maybe she needed those experiences to become the woman she is today, as well as the artist. Her journey also took longer than she would have hoped, or than others might have as they star rocket into stardom. But everyone's path is their own, and as the cliche goes, comparison is the thief of joy. Despite breaking out later in her artistry, she made it, and can find relief and pride in that. Also, for transparency, speaking about the song and how close she really came to quitting, she said that she never seriously considered quitting, but her path has been exhausting and challenging due to a lot of resistance, leaving her feeling very defeated, which I think is inspiring. Throughout it all, she never gave up on young Snoh's dream. During a Twitter Q&A, Snoh called this song very therapeutic for her, but also very emotional as she reflected back on her past. And here in the pre-chorus and throughout the song in its entirety, you can hear Snoh offering peace and comfort to her younger, distraught self who was drowning in her own thoughts. She tells her to stop overthinking things, and what will be will be. Everything works out in the end. Don't go chasing things. The things you need in life will find you. I think this is a mixture of hindsight and obviously being a retroactive letter from the future. But I think it also likely captures the things that present-day Snoh has learned and adopted and ultimately just wished she knew when she was younger. But it comes out as a soothing reminder that everything will be okay. In the second verse, we revisit those challenges that show that nothing has been easy or simple for Snoh, which could be true for both her career and relationships. She also points out that she was lonely but never alone, or at least recognizes that now. This likely reflects those tough years in her career where maybe she didn't feel like she had anyone to lean on. Now looking back on her career and life in this introspective therapeutic exercise, she can see that she had herself, and that was all that mattered, because that's been the constant that's taken her from being a kid with a dream to fighting adversity to finding success. Here in the second and last Tyler the Creator feature of the album, they roleplay partners trying to put aside pride to get past a heated argument. But it's a lot more complicated and layered than that. So let's get into it. At first, Snoh is accepting fault and apologizing to Tyler. It seems almost amicable until Snoh swiftly puts the blame solely back on him. The lines that follow, and really most of the song, may be intentionally contradictory or at least confusing, which captures the essence of their dysfunctional relationship. As Tyler chimes in at the end of every line with an ad-lib, this serves as a thematic interruption in Snoh's chance to talk and say her piece. Both sides display this almost indecision, but it's most obvious in Tyler's ad-libs here. He goes from apologizing to deflecting fault to arguing with her to expressing love for her to telling her it isn't her fault to accepting that it's as much his fault as it's hers in 8 lines. In the chorus, Snoh references those heated exchanges that bring out harsh words that you may not really mean and have to apologize for later. Fitting with an album theme of Snoh talking to herself and having that introspection, the last 2 lines of the chorus may be directed to her. This interpretation paints either Snoh as the main problem in the relationship, which seems unfair given what we know so far, or paints Snoh as responsible and someone with agency in the relationship. She could just drop it and patch things up to recover the relationship, or she could stand on this and break things off if he doesn't take accountability and do better. Tyler takes up both verses to offer the other perspective as Snoh takes the rest of the song, giving him a chance to speak his mind. The majority of this first verse does, to me anyway, paint Tyler as more like the victim. He wasn't being the perfect partner by any means, but Snoh seemed like the one bringing out the heavy artillery. The final few lines bring a beat and rap change. He feels like the problem is bigger than it seems with Snoh. He just can't seem to win with her at the moment. He may be hinting at a larger relationship problem that is causing her to lose her cool more regularly, or something outside of the relationship that's causing her stress. But interestingly, saying that there's something under her skin may mean that it's inside of her, as if it's an innate personality problem, something he can't fix. Or it may mean that it's like an itch underneath your skin that's bothering you, but there's nothing you can do about it. This very well may be a case of toxic framing, gaslighting, and projecting, all things that wouldn't be uncommon in the relationship Snoh describes. So something to think about as we're taking sides. Quickly looking at the pre-chorus and chorus again, the only changes that come throughout the song is in Tyler's ad-libs, which may reflect the state of their argument and relationship. As of now, Tyler seems to have more sympathy for Snoh as he pins her problems as something personal that she needs to deal with. The post-chorus or bridge reveals the reality of their relationship, or at least Snow's understanding of it and feelings towards it. She understands that whatever happens, she'll live, but based on the repeated thought of staying, that seems to be her preference, despite their issues. During this first iteration of it, there's no pressure from Tyler convincing her to stay, showing that it's really her choice, but the facade drops the next time we hear this. Moving into the second verse, Tyler reignites the argument and brings up the idea that every joke contains true shit, or in other words, there must be some truth in it for Snoh to think it and use it against him. Speaking about Snow's feelings and frustrations, OD in Your Feelings seems fitting with Snow's choice of album titles and her being self-assessed as emotional. But as she's deep in her own thoughts and feelings and as they bubble over and out, Tyler thinks she takes it out on him. At this point, he's learned to brush off most of what she says as Snoh letting off steam, which is maybe not the healthiest relationship compromise. This whole relationship seems to be another endless cycle, although this one is fixed by Snoh or Tyler, although seemingly mostly Snoh, apologizing, which allows them to make up only for another fight to inevitably break out. Closing out the song, Tyler's ad-libs show that he has become much more combative and less receptive than he previously was. He repeatedly tells Snoh to stay with him and that she's making a good choice by doing so. It just sounds menacing and a little threatening when you think about it, and a lot more toxic, perhaps revealing the truth of the relationship. Tyler plays the victim to gaslight her and calm her down, but to also trap her in the relationship. He also tells Snoh to stay lonely, which is ironic and again telling that staying in this relationship is more lonely than leaving it, and reinforces the imperfections of this relationship itself. The confusion of the song and argument picks back up in the outro, almost line after line, with apology to argument to apology again, leaving the couple no better than they started, but destined to continue and fail. In probably my favorite song on the album, Snoh thinks back on her time with an ex and can't seem to get them out of her head. Snoh's not afraid to admit that she misses him, unlike some other people who act either vindictive or blasé after a breakup. Snoh misses it so much that she isn't scared to put it out there on the off chance that it may bring them back together. She also seems to indicate that he knows how much she didn't want the relationship to end, making it seem like the guy's decision as he wanted a break from Snoh. You can argue on what circumstances a break in a relationship is a good thing, but here, Snoh recognized what he really wanted was not to be tied down by Snoh yet, and the opportunity to sleep around without feeling guilty. Snoh not being with it may mean that she knew what would happen all along. Or maybe it links back to mean that she wasn't with his time. He never planned to return and she wasn't part of his plan. Either way, it doesn't matter what she thinks anymore because they broke up. It's none of her business if he sleeps with other women, and it doesn't matter what she thinks of him now because it doesn't seem like they're getting back together. Despite that, Snoh can't stop herself from scrolling through old pictures and texts, leaving her cut up reminiscing on the good times they had together and on the emotions that she had during those times and moments. Snoh seems to have a history of bad breakups. This lack of closure, leaving her open, may be used to explain her emotional availability, vulnerability, and capability of digging deep to write these songs. If she had closure in a lot of these songs, they likely wouldn't be as heart-wrenching and soul-destroying because most of them leave Snoh without answers and left to ask herself questions to fill in the blanks. More physically, although not literally, she may be open, as in wounded and then scarred from all of this heartbreak without being able to fully heal from any of them. The pre-chorus plays on the lifestyle change that all of us felt, mainly in 2020 and 2021, being social distancing. Here, she knows that times are different, but he's not social distancing from her out of necessity, he's doing it out of choice. He doesn't want to be with it. Tell me different could be interpreted as say it ain't so. This would fit in with her sorrowful tone as she painfully reminisces on a failed what if. And into the chorus, the main refrain echoes the premise of the song. Her ex is on her mind and she can't shake it. Despite the relationship being over, with how much it plays on her mind, it feels like she's still in it. Snoh's particularly cut up about it because she knows he still cares for her too. Or maybe he knows how much pain he's caused her and how much she still thinks about him and wants him. It makes it even worse that he's winning the breakup and has the power in it. Plus, the fact that he isn't changing his mind and coming back to Snoh. In the second verse, it seems like time has passed, although likely not much, like a few days or weeks if that. Snoh was about to text him but is happy she stopped herself after hearing that he's been talking shit about her behind her back. This drastically changes Snoh's opinion of him. She shames him and his lies by asserting that he knows she gave everything she could in that relationship. She was fully committed and meant everything that she said. Say what you won't say is a really interesting line. She could be urging him to reveal those guarded thoughts he has. She's telling him to be honest and say the things he doesn't want to admit and say out loud. The finer details here are another case of it being too personal for me to tell. We could make assumptions, but they would be completely unfounded. So moving forward, I love this outro. I love James, but I'm not sure how much relevance this part has to the larger story being told. James may represent a better lover who's out there for Snoh, like Tyler was in Neon Peach. Someone who truly loves you and is willing to treat you like they treat themselves. Someone Snoh has been painfully deprived of. Alright, it's those hours, you know the kind. It's dominating Snoh's mind. She's making time to fulfill her needs and needs something done about it yesterday. The guy in his story could be an ex-partner or an ex-situation where this type of hookup isn't totally surprising. No more blurred lines could mean two things. No more surprises. This isn't the first time they've been intimate with one another, they've seen each other's bodies before, nothing is censored between them, nothing is new. Or it may mean no more cute fun and games. At the start of a relationship or something playful, you might be coy with this topic and tease it out a little more. Snoh doesn't care about that, or at least not in this moment and not with this guy. She also appreciates that in this relationship, they understand her. She doesn't have to waste time explaining the things she likes. At the end of the day, it's a booty call and nothing else matters other than it happening right now. Speeding through some of this, Snoh doesn't have any serious intentions with this guy and hopes that's clear and reciprocated to avoid any complications. It's just one of those nights. Even though there's no real love here, Snoh wants him to give it his all and treat her like he does. Apart from that, not much else needs to be said. But when we get to the bridge, there's a little more to unpack in Snoh's demon time. I think No Breaks may be a direct shot and reference to the subject of the previous song. That was obviously a major point of the last song as it was something mentioned early on and was likely the start of the end of that relationship in real life. In this situation, they won't need a break because they're just having fun with no strings attached. But if I'm reaching, this is perhaps just as expected and purely sexual. Snoh hopes that they can just go on and is maybe so, that she won't need a break to recharge before going again and again. While you might assume that this song is about a loving relationship with a significant other, she may be singing about a situation that has all the makings of something more. It starts with perfect physical chemistry and touch, which may suggest that this is the basis of the relationship or at least its origin. Although, to be fair to Snoh, the song becomes more and more sweet as we go. The chemistry she has with this person in the relationship allows Snoh to be her true, unfiltered, honest self. There's no pretending or acting to make yourself more desirable or to ignore arguments. It's as natural as it comes. loves. When she's with him, nothing else matters. Those feelings of joy and bliss overrides everything else. In the pre-chorus, Snoh gets everything she's wanted. He sees her worth and treats her accordingly. This has been an issue in a lot of Snoh's failed relationships. Over the last few albums, Snoh has known what she deserves in a relationship and isn't going to settle for anything else. Although, with each failed relationship, maybe that self-worth erodes over time, making Snoh doubt herself and settle more and more, resulting in her sticking around in situations and toxic cycles for far too long and more often. But here, in this relationship, there's not a problem. And if anything, as we'll get to, Snoh may have recovered some of that self-esteem and self-worth that she may have lost. There are no flaws in this relationship. It's complete, it's whole, it's full in every way, it's everything, and it's all things. The repeated notion of everything and it all preaches this. Looking at the post-chorus, Snoh's learned to be more guarded in love after all of her heartbreaks. So despite being cautious with this guy at first and telling herself, or maybe him, that it wasn't going to turn into anything romantic or serious, it was too perfect for her not to fall in love again. Possibly making her believe in love again. Snoh not giving in could be taken a few ways. She may have been talking to herself and warning, no, he's just a friend, we're not going there. Or if this relationship started differently, she might have said, no, this is a strictly physical thing, there's no love here, I don't want to complicate things. But, you know, in a Swedish accent. Or maybe she told him, right to his face, whatever their prior relationship was before, that she was hurt in the past and needs time to fully heal before thinking about entering any serious relationship. So she gave him notice and let him know what it is so he wouldn't get any ideas. In the second verse, Snoh tells him, don't ease up on this love because you're giving me ideas. A house, marriage, kids, or whatever other trope you want to add in. With how perfect the relationship is, the longer it goes on, the more these thoughts are likely to become a reality, and Snoh can't stop herself from fantasizing about it all. Snoh loves the way he sees her. He has such a great opinion of Snoh that it's refreshing. She loves how she looks from his eyes, and as a result, he's giving her more confidence and worth. I love this idea of how you look from someone else's point of view. It could apply physically, but typically, I would think of it as a mental and emotional thing. People are prone to viewing themselves in a bad light at times, and being reminded or convinced by someone you love that you're more can be a beautiful thing. Time just flies when they're together. It's so natural, it's so fun. Forever isn't even long enough for them because given how it's gone so far, that will go by in an instant too. And with that, the song closes out to a soothing outro, bringing an end to Snoh's most loving track on the album. Speaking in an interview, Snoh explains that this song is about ending a relationship or situation with someone, but they keep hitting you up as if nothing changed. Through that explanation, it seems like ending things was the guy's idea, but despite that, he's the one who keeps reaching out as if they're all good and can keep doing the things that they were doing. The first half of the first verse perfectly fits in with Snoh's description. She's perplexed that they're still talking every day despite ending things. When you end things with somebody, you don't normally keep talking and acting as if you didn't, whether that's in a friendly or sexual way. And again, using her comments as a pulling back of the veil, we can assume that in this case, it was a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. While it's unclear if Snoh's reciprocating his intent and replying to his advances, she claimed when this happened in real life, she didn't respond. So this may be a narrative exploration of going along with it for now, but not being completely on board. By that same token, Snoh's finding it challenging to fully sever their ties. She recognizes all that wasted time that they shared and questions how she's supposed to move on, especially if he won't let her. The usage of how might be intentionally vague, and that would make this really interesting. I think the natural instinct and interpretation of it is as a setup and connecting question. But what if tell me how is isolated as a sorrowful cry as Snoh thinks back on the relationship and how it went wrong? With this interpretation, the lines that follow are the doubtful questions that Snoh has. Should we keep doing this? Are we still supposed to be talking each day? Should I erase all these memories or keep them saved in case things start back up? You're not making it very clear to me. This massively changes Snoh's role and thoughts on this situation. These two varying interpretations pit genuine questions versus disbelief and incomprehension. The real question is Snoh's level of sass at this point, because undoubtedly that grows throughout the song. But here, it seems more open to interpretation. It's as if it's still fresh and she wants to hang on, but is just so unsure of things because of this unique situation he's putting her in. But moving into the chorus, let's talk about dying for love. Snoh gave everything in this relationship only for it to come to an unceremonious end. The phrase may be a reference to the loving idea of dying for someone you love, a sentiment she shared in an earlier song, In the Moment. She may also be alluding to losing herself and her ideas of love by being in this relationship. Her very perception of and faith in love is dying with each heartbreak and each unbelievable circumstance and man she seems to find and deal with. Interestingly, I think the chorus in particular is kind of riddled with confusing and complicated tense usage, making it unclear if the relationship is still happening or if they've separated, which is perhaps intentionally done to fit with the theme and concept of the song itself, a complicated ending that never ends. The second verse is much more clearly defined, as Snoh strongly stands on the side of being in absolute disbelief with this guy and his actions. While there's the possibility that it was questionable in the first verse, now with the change in how and its repeated usage removes any doubt here, and I think supports my theory and interpretation for that first verse. At the end of the day, it's an obviously horrible relationship where the guy in question is only interested in something physical with Snoh and will say whatever he has to get what he wants. I don't have to tell you that's selfish of him to disregard Snow's life and feelings to satiate his own. Now he's drunk texting her, likely asking to meet up so they can hook up again. Snoh thinks that he should be grown up enough to see the problem and shame with this. This is another common problem we hear in Snow's relationships, her partners not matching her expected maturity. If he has the tendency to speak on impulse, take back what he says and regret it, how is Snoh supposed to accept anything he says? To her, he's unreliable, a liar, and a user. Snoh could never believe or trust that he genuinely loves her or wants to get back together. All of his talk is pointless now. She knows she doesn't want anything to do with him anymore. And in the outro, Snoh accepts that you can only expect so much from someone, but he pushes it. There are some things you can't change about a person, and she recognizes her role in their arrangement too. But despite all that, Snoh knows she deserves better, and knows that he knows that too. So the way that he's treating her and acting is inexcusable to her at this point. She also brings up the point of waiting. This is a theme we've gone over before, and it could be meant in a few ways here. She may be talking about waiting a long time for this relationship in particular. Like this relationship lasted a long time, only for it to have this sour ending. Or that it took a while to get started, like they were friends for a while at first, flirting with the idea. Or, and I think this is most fitting with a larger theme of the album, Snoh speaking about her relationship clock. Snow's been through a lot of relationships trying to find the right guy, and when she thought she did, he turned out to be this guy, completely disappointing her, killing a part of her, and tarnishing her hopes of love. Given the dramatic tone shift and some similar elements expressed in this song, this very well could be the ending of the previous song's relationship. Everything was obviously very loving, and didn't have a single flaw. This song almost presents its antithesis, but fits in with Snoh calling this guy the one, and a possible reason why she was with him in the first place. And to close out the album, what a ride it's been. Let's end on a high here. This song seems to be an ending of a relationship, or perhaps a retroactive talk with an ex. It sounds like an oddly amicable breakup, if a little toxic. This sort of contradiction is mirrored by the juxtaposition of her voice, the instrumentation, and the content of what she's saying. The instrumental and vocal style of Snoh here takes us to the clouds in the sky, but the lyrics themselves are undeniably grey and gloomy. It's said that Snoh didn't say I love you or show her affection as much as she might have done in other relationships. I think that's a hint at her now being scarred and perhaps closed off because of her previous relationships. It's taking a toll on her. And while at some stage she was deemed emotionally available and open, by this point she's deprived of true feelings in what seems like another heartbreak. But she soldiers on, as Snoh does. She comforts herself. She'll live. She'll be okay in the end. She's experienced this enough to know that. She may also be accepting to be okay with just herself. Like a message in Violet Skies, she's not alone anymore because she has herself, but still a tragic realization and acceptance for someone who so desperately wanted love. In the main verse, Snoh accepts that she's broken and left a little ruined from her past, but recognizes that this guy still has a chance at love. She hopes that he has a better time with it than she has. Perhaps the most tragic thing of this song and the conclusion of this album's story is that it leaves Snoh viewing herself as the problem, because from her logical point of view, she's been the common denominator in all of her relationships' woes. In this album of introspection and complicated love, Snoh wants her partners to save themselves and doesn't blame them for leaving her anymore. An interesting effect is specifically used for the save yourself line. The underwater filter may reflect Snoh's bottled up grief and sorrow as she drowns in her own tears, essentially telling her partners to let her drown and to not get pulled down with her. All she ever wanted was everything. True love and what's supposed to come with it. And despite thinking she had it at different times, all she's left to do is try to get over each relationship and start again until it ends. running laps in yet another cycle. She has to unlearn each experience of love so she can make room for new experiences and replace failed love with, hopefully, a new wholesome love. But at this point, Snoh sounds like she's lost hope and doesn't even care to unlearn it anymore. She just lets it slide and lets her grief and depression overwhelm her. And despite this sad closing track, I think it's a fitting end for an album that's as deceptively agonizing as it is. With a lot of playful production in what Snoh calls her most fun album, it's that juxtaposition of up-tempo beats and Snoh's heart-wrenching honesty that makes this album so great. But that brings the album and this video to a somber end. Thanks for that, Snoh. I hope you enjoyed the video because I had a great time putting it together, and I hope you go back and listen to this album with a few new things in mind.